my intuition told me so many things about the relationship, and I think that did keep me safe.
Hi, I'm Caroline, and this is The Intuitive Age. Today, I want to talk about intuition in relationships. And this is coming up really strong, really big for me right now personally. So that's kind of why it's at the top of mind. And I just had some thoughts I wanted to share. So, when it comes to intuition in relationships, perhaps in general, it's like we always say, hindsight is 2020, right? And I think this, in many cases, can be especially true when we're talking about intuition because we have this tendency to ignore our intuitive sense up until it's already like too late, so to speak, or in the sense that when things don't work out the way that we wanted them to in any situation, um, we often can look back and think of how our intuition kind of gave us some hints, some red flags. A lot of people are talking about red flags these days. And I think the red flags are 2020 in hindsight as well. So it's tricky because it's one thing to just say, oh, we should pay more attention to our intuition in our relationships. But I think for most of us, we have to start by looking at that intuition in hindsight first in order to really start to understand how it works and be able to recognize it when it does show up. So, being able to pause when things are not going well in a relationship and to reflect back on the past and ask into your intuitive self, what signs were there of this? What did I miss in the past? And can I bring those back up to my awareness now, to my conscious mind now, so that I can really learn from these things? And, and this is helpful, I think, whether we're still in the relationship, we're in the middle of it, or even if it has ended. But I think also really helpful to start asking these kind of questions when we're in the beginning of a relationship with somebody, right? Like, it's pretty clear on the surface for most of us in a new relationship, even a new friendship, right? Even a new like work relationship. We know what our heart is telling us when we feel the connection, we feel the vibe, we feel inspired to, connect with this person and create with this person, all of that kind of thing. But I think it's good to make a point to ask, what is my intuition telling me about this relationship or about this person? And, maybe even specifically, what is this relationship reminding me of? Because ultimately, we learn a lot about relationships in early life. We watch what goes on between our parents, their relationship to one another, as well as each of our caregivers' relationship to us and the relationship to our siblings and other family members. And we start life by modeling, we start by mimicking what we see in those relationship dynamics. And that's what we go on to expect to come from our relationships, all types of relationships. And then we go on to recreate that cluster of relationship dynamics throughout our life, throughout our relationships with other people. We're either, trying to create the opposite of whatever we were exposed to in childhood, or we're trying to create the exact same thing, get that relationship back in a way, or we're trying to do some combination of the two. And all of this is happening unconsciously. But just because something happens unconsciously for most of us most of the time doesn't mean that it can't happen consciously. It doesn't mean we can't become conscious of it. And I think that's so much about of what working and developing our intuition is about, is becoming conscious of the unconscious. Starting to see the unseen and hear the unheard, starting to dip into those, spaces where there is information, there is
stuff that we could be picking up, but we're just not because we haven't been trained to. And now we're training ourselves to pick it up. So, looking at relationships through that lens, especially even in a new relationship, we can actually ask intuitively, what is this relationship reminding me of? Or who is this person reminding me of? What does the flavor of this dynamic remind me of? And how do I feel about that? Because sometimes right away you might see that you're like totally creating a new cycle of a negative relationship pattern. And you could potentially stop yourself right there from getting into some hot water later on. But even just having the awareness, it's not to say that if you notice you are repeating some relationship pattern that you should automatically cut ties immediately. It's not that at all, because we can't not do that. That's how our that's how we operate, right? We are going to be recreating those early relationships in all those different ways. But the more conscious we are about how we're doing it and what we're doing and who we're doing it with, and what we are really intentionally, working to create in that relationship, we can, evolve and advance and adapt our communication and relationship skills much more quickly by using that intuitive sense of, where is this going on that subconscious level? What is this tapping into? What am I processing out through this dynamic? And how can I make sure that I am not just repeating old karmic patterns of relationship styles that are actually not serving me, but instead take the opportunity to see them for what they are in this moment and keep my eye on them, and keep an eye out for the reactionary behaviors that are coming up in me, or the old emotional stuff that's going to be getting processed through this dynamic in me, and how can I communicate most clearly about that, with myself first and foremost, but even potentially in the relationship with this person. Can we have an open communication about the intuitive aspect of this relationship? Because if you can do that, if you have relationships with people who are actually open to that, then you're really setting off, on an incredible, a potentially incredible journey of conscious, intuitive relationship. And I think that's ultimately what we want. That's what we're going for. It's like the more open, honest, and authentic we can be, the better, always. And finding people who are in support of that kind of journey, that's who we want to be relating to. So I'm in this reflection place right now because I've just had an event in a relationship in my life where I am now seeing everything much more clearly. I'm seeing the signs that were there from day one, from absolutely the beginning. My intuition told me so many things about the relationship, and I think in some sense that did keep me safe. I didn't completely ignore my intuition at all. A lot of what my spirit team is doing right now is reminding me that the reason I don't like having the emotional response that I'm having right now is because it's not just that I have intellectually processed this relationship already, but that I have been intuitively processing this all along the way. I've known a lot of this, of what I'm seeing now, what's coming to light now, I've known. And so, and that's why I played out a sort of karmic pattern, coping, sort of mechanism for myself, that I kept my distance in this relationship. And I allowed this person to come very, very close. And I came as close to them as they needed me to be. But I see now why they were yet another one of these friends who I allowed them to need me. I met their needs as best as I could, and I allowed that to be the focus of the relationship, to the extent that, I very rarely needed anything from the relationship. And I think part of that is my conditioning of avoidance of connection because of times when I didn't get my needs met or when I wasn't seen or wasn't noticed, when I felt forgotten or silenced early on. And so I didn't let this person get that close to begin with, to where I really trusted them to see me or recognize me or whatever. But of course, part of me did. Part of me totally trusted them. You know, some like the sweetest little part of me who really thought they had true friend, like a soul connection with this person. That part of me is really freaking hurting right now. And we have to move through those feelings, you know, because that's the other thing about intuition is like way better in hindsight, just like everything else. And and it's just not, it doesn't fix everything. It doesn't make everything better. It doesn't preclude pain. So anyway, my battery's about to die, so I'm going to end this here. But I hope that makes sense. Would love to know about your experience with, you know, building intuition into your relationships and how you're utilizing that, or if you're seeing things in hindsight like I so often do. And of course, if you have any questions about any of this or if any of it's not clear, I'd be happy to clarify anything for you. Just let me know. All right. Bye, guys.